What up, folks? Welcome, Jamie, to the Midlife Crisis Podcast, brother. I am super excited to have you. How are you doing today, man?
Fine, thanks, Mickey G. I'm really happy to be here too, and it's a real pleasure. I've been looking forward to this moment, to be honest.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, we've had just incredible guests on this show over the year, and you are not going to be any exception. I really liked our intro call. You know, the thing that made me immediately, and I do these, I've had multiple people that I said, I think you're a good person, but thanks, but no thanks. But I could feel your warmth through the camera, man. And that's a very rare trait that you can feel warmth through the camera. So I really do think we're going to have an incredible conversation.
Thank you so much.
Of course, man. This is going to be awesome. So before we get to the famous podcast Mikey G Web3 question, we needed to go, of course, updates. I'm going to say this until I get my account back. People, we need Mikey G back on Twitter. I'm not going to lie. I say this a lot. I can't stand X, but I have to be on X because that's where my audience is. So they've completely automated, just like every other social platform, their help center. I need to talk to a human at X. I refuse to. I've been quoted anywhere from $7,000 to $15,000 to get like a dev to recover my account. I'm just not going to pay for something that I am paying Twitter for that should do their job. So, I mean, listen, people, go to your LinkedIn network, look at your first level of connections, second level of connections, anybody that you know, please hook me up. I finally did get a case number through premium chat. So hopefully we can get that resolved sooner and later, but it doesn't matter. Tons of amazing conversations with big companies in the background. We have a strategic arm to the podcast with my co-founder, Bubble. He's doing amazing things. Maddie Mintz was back last night. We're going to start dedicating Mondays to more real estate type podcast and entrepreneurs because that is the funnel he has gone down and concentrated on. I'm going to still keep on pushing the Web3, but the real mission statement here is genuine human connection. We will not give that up. And it's just really cool that even though my account got hacked, I'm still able to build and get momentum. Speaking of momentum, we have K's on Friday. We have other people like Mr. Mo coming on, talking to Gigaverse still. I just got to get a hold of Dith. We keep on going back and forth. Plenty other. Kevin from Duper, cannot link up with him. Lots of just different people that are doing things all over the spectrum. And continue podcast from Kevin dropping today. Podcast from Pupils will be dropping later this week. Just had an amazing call with Will from Amalgam. So yeah, I'm not giving up, and we're lots of content, lots of content to come. All that being said, we're to the meat of this podcast. We're to the meat of the conversation. First off, we like to do a formal introduction here. So Jamie, known as Mr. Cat, has worked for massive companies, little ones like Apple, Nike, Facebook, Instagram, character designer and director. He is deep in the 3D animation. You've obviously seen his awesome work. He is the man, the myth, the legend behind a small little project called A Kid Called Beast. In addition to, he's got this just really cool, kind of fun, playful charm, but he also has precision around his animation, but uses just these vibrant, playful aura to it. And then finally, one of the most interesting facts, this dude just straight up quit his job and bought a ticket around the world to travel, which is something I've always dreamed of doing. Insanely jealous. But how did I do you justice with the intro, Jamie? Anything you want to add?
I think that's a perfect intro. It's simple and sweet. So
all right, I love it. And so it is time for the world famous Mikey G Web3 podcast question. Jamie, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? To reiterate for the audience that has never listened to this podcast, we need episode 1, 2, and 3. Episode 1, childhood years. Why this is important is because it obviously is impact on the mind that you have today. Molded your mindset in some sort of way. Vivid memories, family figures, mantras that you were taught at a young age that you still think about today. That's what I'm really interested in this part. Episode 2, schooling, traveling around the world, jobs. How did you become an artist? What were the skill sets gained? Very actually interested more in the failures in the learning lessons than the wins, but we can talk about wins as well too. And really things as you're reflecting to prep you for Web3. And then Web3 is its own journey and learning lesson as well. But those 2 episodes are gonna, by the time we get to Web3, people are gonna understand who you are as an individual, and we're gonna respect your brand that much more when they continue to engage with you after this podcast in the future in Web3. Cannot wait to hear it, my man. Let's have at it.
Let's go.
So, episode 1, how you feeling? What do you got?
So I'm feeling good, and so my childhood memory, right? Memories. What I think as you were speaking, many images came to my mind, and one of them was, for example, when I was a kid, and I used to live in the States, and so my family is Spanish. So what was always curious to me every time I would go to school is that everybody's parents spoke in English and everybody spoke in English. But when I got back home, everybody spoke in Spanish, you know? So that made, it was really funny. It was like what a curiosity, you know, you don't understand,
Right.
but at the same time you're learning. And I think that's very good because you start to understand how people can be different and how I liked speaking in English, but then I went to a friend's house and like their parents spoke in English, and it was very, very strange for me. So I remember that very vividly.
Yeah, I love that. And do you think, like, reflecting back on this now, was that I'm assuming a positive thing, right? Like what I think at a young age, even though it was probably inherent at the time, but reflecting back on it now, you're learning about just how maybe different cultures are in real time at a young age. Any insights there reflecting back on, or was it just really recognizing the differences?
100%. I think, like right now, I live in Peru. Actually, I was born in Spain. I was born in Madrid. 3 months later, I went to the States, and from then on, like I've been living most of my life out of Spain, away from Spain. So I've always seen my hometown as a place to go in summer or for Christmas and see family. And when I lived there, it just felt a bit, I didn't feel at home. And I kind of feel at home when I'm somewhere else.
Interesting.
So that's something that is very, that is very vivid. And if we relate it to that experience, yes.
Yeah. And so as far as like the cultural differences as you're growing up, talk to me a little bit more about that, of like how that impacted you, right? Because I'm assuming your experience at home was totally different at school. Any insights there?
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I remember going in like first grade already, and you would pledge allegiance to the flag, right? And like I remember playing soccer, which now I call football, and all those kinds of cultural things, right? Where you feel very connected to that kind of lifestyle. And so then going back to Spain and feeling in a different mood. So what I think that has given me the chance is to transport myself in a way where I usually think that when I go to a new city, it takes me like maybe 2 or 3 days. Now it's a bit less, but it used to take me like 2 or 3 days to adapt. Like imagine you go to New York and you're in the subway, but then you go to LA, and if you don't have a car, you're not going to do anything, right? And the time you take to get used to this place is actually something that I actually love, you know, because you feel uncomfortable and suddenly you start feeling comfortable again, and you start understanding, not in a rational way, much more in the senses, you know, and I find that very enriching, you know, as an experience, as a something to live.
Dude, and this is a fascinating topic, and I'm so glad that you brought this up, which is we're really talking about adaptability, right? Being open to change. And this is a massive theme through the guests that come through. and anybody that wants to be successful or experience good things in life. Talk to me about how much you think being adaptable, open to change in this aspect has helped you out.
Well, I think there's two ways to see it. In the long run, I think it's been very positive.
Hmm.
Now, on the other hand, what you lack of is roots. So you need to find your roots because I something that's always caught my attention is when meeting people that maybe stayed in the same city or even the same village all their life. Usually, they will tell you that where they live is the best place in the world, and so many places are the best place in the world. It depends on how you make it your home.
Right.
And so I would live thinking, where is my home? You know, and I didn't understand where it was. So that was something that really became important in my life.
Right. And that brings up, Evan, yet another fascinating. I haven't really talked about this much on this podcast, but home means something different to everybody, right? And for someone that maybe lacked that sense of like a home base or what home meant because you were traveling around, like you said, there's a very big positive, which I think I don't know, man. I don't think there's any right. I say this a lot on the podcast too. I think one of the big problems with this world right now is everything to everybody's black and white. Life is just grays, man. Very many shades of grays. So my question is, define home to me from your perspective, knowing that you had this experience from a young age and what we just talked about. I'd be interested in what you thought home meant to you.
I think home is related to people. Home is to
Tell
be
me
with
more about that.
when you're a kid is to be with your parents. When I went to Madrid, I remember going to see my grandparents, and like my grandparents and my grandparents, which I did not know. I would go to their home, and I would see the frames on the walls,
Hmm.
and I would see that my grandfather used to paint. My great grandfather had a different kind of style of painting, and
Yeah.
I would stay there like staring at those paintings and trying to identify. And I would notice, for example, my grandfather would try to imitate Picasso, or my great great grandfather that I didn't know, he was an expert making straight lines. So he would like paint cards, not poker, the Spanish cards, right? So he'd paint them like on a table, and they would tell me he did it without a ruler. So I'd be like, oh wow, how do you? So that's what for me represents home. It's the people that were connected to me.
Dude, and I love that insight because I think that's if you ask many people, the other way to say what you're saying is it is really about just familiar feelings and tradition. And one beautiful thing that we've already got to is even though you said it was a disadvantage of like maybe I think a lot of people think of home, they think of like the physical, tangible things. But another thing that comes up a lot on this podcast is the the tangible um commercial world that we grow up in, that is just not the important part. So when you think just like a click deeper, like it's not like we're thinking this is not revolutionary rocket science here, but it's amazing to me the amount of people, and that's all I do here on the podcast too, right? I'm just interpreting what you're saying and going just like a little level deeper, which is home means so much more than just an object. It really is about tradition and feeling. Like when I think about home, for me, it's literally like smells of food, the energy around the dinner table, familiar faces, like you said, and these kind of custom traditions during the holidays and Thanksgiving and all of these different things that deeply mean a lot to me. It was never about the physical structure that we're in. That's just like, dude, we're already 15 minutes in, by the way, but already an amazing, beautiful conversation. So I
And
appreciate the insights, man.
the
Anything else to say there?
yeah, what you're talking about also reminds me of the memories. We attach to these people and those memories, the smell. I went to, when I did my round the world trip, one of
Yeah.
my trips was I wanted to go see the house where I lived when I was 6 years old.
Mm,
And so we had some friends of my parents that like I could stay at her place.
Yeah.
And we went to that place. It was in Concord, Massachusetts,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd go like through a forest. And she told me, "Okay, so now you have to be the one that tells me where to go." She's a scientist, so she was like trying to see. I guess she was like analyzing if I would feel it. And suddenly, like you would see it was in September, October, I think, and it was beautiful orange
Yeah.
yellow trees. And I found the house, and suddenly it's like there was this deep connection that was really special, and that's what memories and home becomes, and
Oh,
that's what I cherish the most.
dude, beautiful conversation. I love this so much, man. So talk to me about, and you actually talked about this at home, which I think is a perfect segue. Seems like a lot of your family were artists. You're an artist now. I would love to talk about from a young age, how did creativity and art start having an impact on your world?
Well, I think in several ways. I remember my mother; she would give me sheets of paper, blank paper, very clean, and some nicely sharpened pencils, and that's something that really felt special. And I would say, going back to feeling like home, you would feel cared about, right? So they would prepare something where you would feel comfortable. And maybe for parents, it's like, yeah, let the kid draw so he doesn't fool around or bother us, right? But for me, it was almost sacred, having my white piece of paper.
Yeah.
So my grandfather was a engineer, but he
Hmm.
used to. Um, my mother, she was, I don't know how you call it because it's in the architectural world, but it's more like a designer.
Yeah.
But she quit when she became a mother. She had us, but she's always been connected to painting, to art. And
Yeah.
my father's a scientist. He's a physicist, so
Oh, okay.
he's a creative,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is, I think we are all problem solvers in a way in our own realm. Of course, he's in another kind of level, but what I mean is trying to find ways to get to solve problems that a client can have or that I have or something I want to express in a way I find I'm an explorer, just like a scientist might be looking for something, right?
Thank you so much for saying that because that's just another way to say it. And it is we have this conversation a lot as well too, which is creativity at its essence. One of the base of the essence of creativity, it's just problem solving. Some of the most creative people in the world are mathematicians. They're not drawing or painting anything, right? And I
Yeah.
think there's just this huge misconception of what creativity means. So thank you for sharing that insight because you cannot say that enough. And it's especially cool when an artist says that, right? Because it just makes it that point more a lot so much more poignant. My question to you then is, and I always ask this a lot of times for creatives, because I remember I told you I went to design school and I've been a graphic designer, but majority of my career. But I suck at drawing and painting, right? I'm horrible at it. But I know about color theory and I know about type and relationships, all the things they teach you in design school, and tools to help you circumvent the fact that you're not good at drawing. My question to you is, how do you think creativity is built? Exploration, repetition, is it inherent to you? Like, what is your experience on that creativity journey, and how do you think you began to start manifesting that? What did that look like?
Well, I think it starts with curiosity,
Ooh, like
right?
that.
And through that curiosity, you start crashing against walls.
Hmm.
That's where we have to find solutions, and this can be how to express yourself or how to understand something.
Hmm. Don't worry about the hammer, man. We're all good.
Yeah, I'm
It's all good.
sorry.
No, no, totally good. You can barely hear it.
Thank,
And so the curiosity is a great way to put it, but you also then said the walls.
mhm.
So talk to me a little bit about hitting those walls. What are some of the tools in your tool belt that you hit when you hit walls? Is it just continuing on trying new things? Is it doing different using different tool sets? Is it relationships? Like, what does that look like to you?
I think in every aspect, as an artist or designer, or I think any profession or career that you do with your heart and soul,
Mm-hmm.
who you are affects how you're going to face everything. So, what I love about working in different projects with different people is that I feel like I work with different parts of my brain or my heart, which allow me to be much better as a complete designer, artist, or whatever we want to call it today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the walls, they can be any type of walls. I mean, you name it, right?
Oh, it can be mental, it can be physical, it can be I found this. I love your insight on this. It seemed to me, and just as me in particular for me, deadlines actually helped me be more creative in the sense that it forced me to do something, right? If you gave me all the time in the world, I would just procrastinate. Well, are you familiar with that concept, or what do you think about that?
Completely. And it really depends on, like, I have a list of things I want to learn. And these lists are like, they vary in terms of, is it going to be something I always think about is horizontal or vertical, right? So horizontal is I learn a style, I learn a technique, and I start developing it in a kind of, you enter the zone or a kind of procrastination kind of way, where you just doing the same thing without really worrying. And then there's the vertical one, which is the technical one. So those are really hard. I need to take a break because I'm learning something new and I don't understand it. And those are like really difficult. But once I'm able to understand that, then I can let it flow again, right? And letting it flow is sometimes hard too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we talk about this a lot on this podcast too, flow state. Do you feel like you've ever accomplished or know what flow state feels like in a creative mindset? Does that resonate with you?
Well, my body battery, see, I have a body battery watch. It does. Like right now with the mint and everything, it has been a bit different. But when I'm in a project, even if there's like deadlines and stress or whatever, when I sit down and I'm completely focused, my body battery is almost still. Like I can be 4 hours and I can go from 95 to 90 when normally I'd be like at 70. So I do
Mhm.
believe that entering that zone, your body enters a sort of like calmness, even though your mind may be tense or like, looking for. But I do think that physically it shows.
Let's dive a little bit deeper there, man. Uh, the physical aspect to creativity. What have you found? And there's so many interpretations of like this mind, body, and soul when it comes to creativity. What works for you?
Well, I believe in, I forgot the name right now. I'm sure you'll know it. Oh, circadian
Yeah.
cycle.
Yes.
Okay, so I know many people like to work at night. My problem with night is that, or I'm tired, or I start imagining things that are not going to happen. I feel that that dreamlike kind of aspect is very nice in terms of projecting or imagining, but usually when I wake up, it's not how I imagine. And it reminds me of, I don't know if it was this Friends chapter or episode where like somebody dreams that they wrote a song and it ends up being the Beatles song, right? So he didn't really
Yeah.
invent it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why for me the night is dangerous.
Yeah, I agree too. And the older I have gotten, I'm in my 40s now. Basically a boomer when it comes to the Web3 people. I mean, I basically am 100 years old, everybody I deal with. And so sleep, man, sleep is just so essential. 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And it goes against everything that this culture tells you. Now, listen, when I was 22, could I stay up till 3 a.m. and then go to work at 7 a.m., maybe drinking copious amounts of alcohol? Absolutely, I could. Was that my best version of myself? No, not at all, right? Uh, So the circadian rhythm really makes sense to me too. I mean, there's a reason why, um, your body feels more refreshed with a sunrise, and the sunset. Sunrise and sunset are huge parts and pivotal moments in our day every day. But I don't think anybody really thinks about that deeply. Some of the most relaxing moments I ever have is, fortunately, I live close to the beach in San Diego in Southern California, and watching a sunrise or a sunset on the beach, there's just something it's it's bigger than you, and it affects your body in different ways. And like, that's the type of energy that I've always found has really made me think outside of the box, or profoundly impacted me to get maybe to a different realization. Thoughts there?
Yeah. So like for example, if I have a deadline, I rather go to bed early and wake up at 4:35 in the morning and be sitting down at 5:30
Hmm.
than to stay until 1 in the morning, and then the next day I'm gonna be like a bit destroyed and not as focused. So I know it's not a very popular kind of method, but for me it just works. I'm like an athlete, with the work. That's how I feel it. And if you start like not sleeping well for several days in a row, you're gonna notice it in the next ones. And what I want to be is constant, as much as possible, consistent and constant. So the best way, as you've mentioned, right, like in circadian cycle and sleeping well, eating well. I started like I fast, for example. I don't have dinner. Well, now not that much, but I was like that for about 2 years, and I want to get back to it.
Yeah.
More energy, and like going low on carbs helps you not be so sleepy after lunch, so that makes you be able to focus. So I think there are different ways to handle your 24 cycle, um, and that's what I'm focused on more than like staying at night, for example.
Yeah. Love it. So amazing conversation already, man. So cool. I'm so happy that you're here. Let's kind of start unless you want to talk anything about um you know like pivotal moments in your childhood, mom, dad, if not, totally cool. But those insights, lessons learned. Anything else there before we kind of start evolving into this, how your creativity grew as a human?
Well, I think there's something that I always remember, and it's also related to drawing. There was a technique that I did, and I used to like a lot, and I think it affected a lot how I work now. I would take a rubber band or an eraser on the paper, and I start erasing, and then like all the rest of the rubber band or the eraser that was left, I would look at it and see what I could find, right? So I start like connecting the dots and try to find shapes, and so I think that's very like how I work today. And what if this, then that, and I was notice a kind of style which also annoyed me because it's like I always have the same style. I want to find something else. I want to see other shapes in these little chaotic creations that appear. So I think that was a pivotal moment.
Dude, that's a beautiful insight. That's a beautiful insight. So I mean, I think the natural follow-up question here is, did you ever get, or the older you got, as you're reflecting on this moment, did you get comfortable with being like, it's okay to own a style, even though you're always forcing yourself to like think differently, like you said, be a little chaotic? What are your perceptions, or not perceptions, but what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm privileged to be an artist that's able to work with a certain style. So I also like push myself to try to get there, which luckily I have. Seeing other people's work, which I admire and I can't do, has been very frustrating, because you always you love what other people may be doing, and you can't do it or you don't know how to do it well. And so finding a style that I love made me be able to continue in my little bubble and be able to take from other people, like, inspiration, but not be so hard on myself that I can't do certain things that others do naturally, right? Because I think we all have a sort of knack in how we can develop our creativity or how we work in general, and how our brain is wired.
Yeah, and that's I'm really glad that you brought that up because my art is this podcast, right? I keep a very rigid format, and I could go off the cuff every time, but what it's allowed me to do is really get good at my craft because there are common themes that obviously come up. But again, I have hundreds of reference points now that I'm able to naturally take the conversation wherever I need to go based on my reference points and the years that I've been doing it. I don't think I would be nearly as good at this if I were to do something different every time. So that's exactly what you're saying. And like you think about the world-renowned artists that people always talk about, they have a style. And what I'm getting at is to be excellent at something, I really do think part of the equation is repetition of similar things for decades, right? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think that the way that you create this podcast, it's very related to the type of person that you are. So the more you know yourself, the more you're going to be able to put those lines and say, this is how I want to do it. And sometimes that's how you, by the repetition, or sometimes that's by introspection, that's by a mix of things. And you can know that there are other podcasts around or other live, talks, but this one is yours. And not just because it's yours, you like it because you've built it in a way that fits your personality. And that's what becomes meaningful and purposeful.
Yes.
So for me, it's the same. And I find that in the past 10 years that I've been doing character, I can connect the dots between each project that I've made and understand what I learned and how it helped me on the next project, whether it was artistic or technical or in production or business wise. But they're all part, for me at least, they're part of the same project.
That is such a beautiful way of putting it, man. And I could not agree more. Absolutely. And you said one of the most important parts of the equation too is self-reflection, introspection. This is something that I think, unfortunately, a large part of humans go through their whole life and never really find or are too scared to have that true self-reflection, introspection, because the majority of the time when you do that, you're like, I'm a pretty flawed human being and I got to figure this out, right? What are your thoughts on just that concept in general?
Well, I think, and this might be an unpopular opinion as well, is that we need to know how to be alone. Because it's when you're with yourself and you're capable of looking at yourself and accepting yourself that suddenly things start to work out. And if we take it to the art scene or even creating, an environment like you do, this can be worked with introspection, with acceptance, with knowing your limitations, how to exploit your limitations. And for that, you have to know how to be alone. I know people in my family, we don't have to go too far, they can't stand being alone. And it's very typical that, like, I prefer to have a meeting in a one-on-one, for example, more than like a big party. And I have family members that they prefer, like, if we're 50, it's better. But I find that in a party of 50, I said hello to everybody, but I know I really didn't connect with anybody.
Right.
Some people love it, and it's respectable. But sorry, I interrupted.
No, I think that's another just like really good insight, and I think that is, again, like I said, you're going to say a lot of things that might just resonate for somebody, and if for somebody that's just as simple, because I also like we talk about these high level concepts, but then you just gave a tangible, actionable item to somebody. Like if someone is struggling with this concept, go to the forest, go to the ocean, go to somewhere by yourself and just sit in silence. I mean, that is actually a therapeutic thing. That's the other thing I like to do here is for someone like you that is so busy making this super cool artwork. You just had a drop yesterday. You've got a bajillion things going on. But now we're just able to sit for like an hour and a half and have a deep, meaningful conversation, which a lot of this is reflection. That's therapeutic in itself too. And that's one of the beautiful benefits that I think come out of a podcast like this. Thank you so much for sharing all of this insight already. Let's get to I'm so glad I asked one more thing from your childhood, because that rubber band eraser story was phenomenal. Got a couple questions from the audience already. We got.
I'm sorry. Just one thing. Do you know that there's a thing? I think in English it's called that way as well. It's called pareidolia, which is a beautiful word. And you know when you look at the sky and you close your eyes a little bit and you see there's like little worms. Like in the air, like floating little stuff.
Yes.
That's a good image of what I'm talking about.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. They got the little worms. Sometimes it's dots. It's I know what I forget the term. I think close to what you said. Don't know exactly. But listen, we got people watching on the Abstract on X and on YouTube, and we already got some questions. I'm going to ask this. I'm going to use this time actually too to reset too. We're streaming on Abstract. I know we got a lot of chats on X. X people, I'm sorry. Please come over to Abstract. It's way easier for me to chat, hang out, and listen and interact. It's fine if you watch on X, but the comments are pretty buried and it's difficult. 2 questions that have come through. Are you a reader? Has that impacted? Are you more of a doer, do by action?
I'm a doer in the sense of creator. You know, I'm not a creative. I'm a creator. So, and I learn through action. Now, I like to read, but usually I spend more time doing. And usually when I choose my books, they're usually like the last book I read was The Courage to Be Disliked, part 1 and part 2, to try to understand how I think and how that's going to help me as a person in my work and also in my art, because you need to be brave to do what you want. You need to know how to any problem is an interpersonal problem. Anything that's going to stop you from acting is probably because you need to accept who you are and not be afraid to be. And so the more I'm able to be in peace with that, the more I create with power, So that's what I'm interested in reading. But I love novels and stuff like that,
Yeah, and I get this. I get this sense from you that and there's again another beautiful thing that's coming out of it. There's just no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong answer for being creative. It's different for everybody else. And I've had plenty of people on the show that are creative solely through deep reading, right? But you're talking about, and I think this is my creative outlet as well too, is I just got to do things. And if I sit and just think, that's great. But the real creativity for me comes when I do things and I'll have this fleeting moment, whether it's a walk or in the shower, saying oh, what I did today relates totally to this thing I did 2 years ago. There's some synergies here, which by the way I think will continue to become one of the most lucrative parts of what I built is making connections, right? Because I deal with founders and top tier people like yourself, and the power of being able to make connections at that level and doing it with my authentic brand of hey, I'm doing this because I appreciate you and I think you're a good human. I want you to succeed. That's really powerful. And that's just a simple concept. And I tell people that sometimes and they're like, you can build a business around that? And I'm like, yeah, because nobody does it. It's such a simple thing, but we just live in this age, which it's me, PvP type stuff. And it's amazing to me the amount of people that are even almost apprehensive when I try to do it. To be like, dude, are you serious? You're gonna just do this for free? And I'm like, yeah, why would I not? I'm here to help you out. Beautiful.
Well, yeah, we all like to express ourselves somehow. I have the urge, need to express myself visually, and I think this is a form of expression that can fulfill you deeply. You know?
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so let's get into this creator journey. So you've got family surrounded by a young age. You're starting to get exposed to different things. Give me to like high school. You're just thinking about going to, we call it college. Everybody else calls it university. Let's start going through those years and talk to me about, and obviously I think we should just keep it in um, the theme, which has been like mind, body, and soul and creativity exploration. Let's start blossoming into that journey.
Well, when I had to like, I was finishing school and I had to choose where I was gonna go. Drawing was really something I was gonna want to get into. I'm not a very good drawer, and I'm a worse drawer now because I stopped doing it a long time ago. I do 3D specifically, and I always had in mind like I wanted to do more fine arts, but I was a bit afraid, to become some kind of like artist that doesn't know, the cliche kind of thing.
Hmm.
I'd also have to pass a test, which I don't know. My sister, she did fine arts after. She got really quickly in. And then I also thought about illustration for comics, but
Uh-huh.
I was a bit afraid, if I would have known that there is a good industry, but I wasn't sure. And then with my mother, like we saw digital design, and that felt like I had this fear of like I want to do art, but I want to make sure I can get a job. And it seems like all of this digital thing, it's really booming, and you have like so many different software, so many possibilities, and design and art. There's always this fight between designers with artists and artists with designers. I don't want to get into that fight because I don't really care. But
Yep.
I was more like in, all right, so I have an artistic skill. I want to get into design, and I'm not a good designer actually, because I'm not very good at creating like grids. I can do a grid. I know the concept. For example, what we were talking before, I know the concept of a grid, but my designs don't look nice. They don't look brandable, and I don't know why. I follow all the rules. I do it, and it doesn't look, or at least to me. So if to me it doesn't look good, that blocks me. And so I entered that world, and then started like creating designs, and I really liked motion graphics because it had this dynamic, these kind of designs that really appealed to me at that moment. And yeah, so I had that sense that this is going to allow me to get a job. I also wanted to be a film director, so I studied film. I made a short film underwater. I don't know if you remember the Chris Cunningham, Michel Gondry, and Spike Jones videos. Yeah, there was like these three directors cut. It was called, and there was
Mm,
a music video that Chris Cunningham directed of Portishead underwater.
I'm gonna have to look this up, man.
Oh, beautiful. And I was obsessed with that music video. So I had to make a short film underwater. And I met this other crazy guy that was just as crazy as me. And he's actually Peruvian, which is why now I live in Peru. Because he's from, hey, bro, you have to come to Peru. And we learned how to get underwater cameras, and just do the whole thing to make a short film underwater.
Yeah, yeah,
But that was the next stage. Yeah.
yeah. No, but that's awesome because it brings back to this play experimentation. What are your thoughts there on because when I think when a lot of people interpret play and experimentation, they're just do whatever is in front of them and it's not intentional. Do you have any thoughts around, as weird as this sounds, in your own terms, how you properly play or experiment, or is it truly just random chaos in your mind?
It's never random chaos for me. Like, I can give you many examples. The fact that I used to create animals because that was easier for me in 3D when I started doing 3D. And I started doing humans because one of my reps, my agents, he told me, it's going to be easier for me to find your clients if you can do humans.
Hmm.
And so that was a great idea. And it was difficult for me because creating cool faces in a stylized way is not easy. So it wasn't random that I started creating human characters. It wasn't random that I got to do a kid called Beast the way I did it.
Yeah,
I see the progression of the human characters that I've been making, for example.
yeah, yeah. And even saying like, experimenting with underwater cameras was a product of you were super fascinated by this music video and you were inspired to make something off of that. So it's some type of thing that impacted you in real life that was the catalyst for experimentation. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and especially in that case, like my buddy was the technician, and I was the guy that was directing. So it was like my story. I was directing. We had like 30 people. It was my first short film. We even had this actress. At the end, she left because I was too young and I didn't, or she was too much young. I don't know. She left. But she was a famous actress, which for me was like, whoa, bro. I mean, there's a famous actress in my short
Yeah.
film. We did
Yeah.
it with somebody else. It worked really well as well. But the fact that I could have the experience to be with 30 people, take like a year to do that short film, that was selecting itself for prizes, competitions, right, or festivals. This director that I used to love a lot, he was in the festival and said that my sensitivity wasn't for everybody, So these kinds of things, they were just like, wow. I mean, somebody that I respect so much can say that, and this was a great experience for me to understand that my character, or I didn't want to be the coffee boy for so long because the industry for film is so difficult that even there are like so many talented people. Whereas at that time, you took After Effects, Photoshop, you took different softwares, and you're already building something by yourself at home.
Yeah.
So it's just so much more business wise, like I'm gonna be able to leave my mother's house if I get into design. If I get into film for real, I'm not gonna leave in like 10, 15 years. This is not gonna be possible.
Right.
So it was a strategic decision there as well.
Yeah, this is fascinating to me because you have all of these characteristics of a true creative, but you're also making a lot of these practical, rational decisions on making money and getting a job. Talk to me about that in general, because that's just kind of like a juxtaposition of mindsets. Like, is it, and you mentioned this, and maybe it comes out of this. You said there fear, right? There was a fear that you thought maybe that you wanted to do the comics, but you might not be the best at it. Talk to me about these themes here of just like, it seems like these competing interests at times and how you've dealt with that over time.
Well, I'm gonna give you a very practical answer, and it's one I've already given to different people, so it's not new. But I think it's very elaborate. I spend a lot of time thinking about my process, and I think there are three things that are super important in how I work. The first one is do what you love. The personal projects that you create are the ones they're going to call you for. It sounds very cliche, but it's true. So
Yeah.
get your time out, do your projects that you love, your personal projects, and show those on your website, and maybe send other ones to clients directly so you can make a living while your dream is coming true. So that's the first thing. The second thing is be very careful and make sure you know what you're good at, because you can love something and be very bad at it.
Mm.
At least in my case, right? But the thing is, the moment to get to where you want is going to be maybe too long. So understand, like the blending, and there's also a beauty to understand what you love and what you're good at, because you kind of end up loving what you're good at if you know how to manage it well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the last but not least is who's your client. Like you need to be able. The beauty of making art, in my opinion, is not just making it for the sake of it. The full circle comes when you can live from it. When you have freedom. This is also maybe an unpopular opinion for some people. It's everybody's allowed to think what they want, but for me, I think the honor of my work is not only that you like it, but that I can live from it, and I can say that I dedicate my whole, like every day of my life, I dedicate it to my craft. And I
Yes.
don't have to find another job to be able to dedicate it to my craft, or like the fact that it's funded by my own work makes me feel proud instead of like getting another job to be able to try to sell things. So this is not. I'm not talking bad about anybody. I worked hard to make this possible. So these three things together were my goal for like the simplicity of and freedom of being able to live doing what I love. It needs to be full circle, or else it's not complete.
Yeah. Nah, man, that's such a good way and beautiful way of explaining it, because I can relate to so much that you're saying, because like I said, this podcast is my art, and my version of saying that, like I still have a full-time day job, right? Because I'm not going to make an impractical decision to say like, oh, it's all about passion, and if I just quit and go all in, it's going to get me to where I want to get me. And it's like, no, that the truth is, even if you are good at what you do, that still takes time. And even that, brings this up, that comes up a lot too, is what is your concept on luck and timing throughout your growth in a period? Has it impacted you more than you think, or do you think it is really about blood, sweat, and tear and perseverance?
I don't know. I think it's about both because depending on how you look at things, I could say I'm lucky or I'm unlucky. I mean,
Right, right,
there,
right.
there's the sergeant in your mind that says you're still a loser. You should be up here, And then
Mhm.
there's the other part of you that is much more tolerant and acceptance, and will say you're doing good. Continue. So I think it really depends on the day.
Yeah. No, I think that's just a practical response. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer for that. I think my take on it is there are just whether you want to call it energy or fate or whatever, however you want to define it, I think you can up your chances at being in the right place or meeting the right people or maybe possibly being in the right time through perseverance and hard work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, now,
Uh,
as long as you can live, from your work, um, I don't know about how you feel about this, but for me, like, there's no project that has fulfilled me deeply forever. It's always a journey. Like when I spoke at this super festival that I admired, I made it. I thought that after speaking in that festival, I'd be happy forever. And of course not. I was happy for a week, you know?
mhm.
So I think I also took some time, and it took me years, I'd say, and I'm not even sure if I've completed that task, to understand that my identity is not on the result of anything. So
Ah,
I'm never going to be happy because I reached whatever I'm going to reach.
mhm.
So that's really important.
And that is a critical mindset for constant, which is funny because that is actually how a lot of true success is driven. When you call, and listen, you can define success in a bunch of different ways, but I'm talking the point of like in the eyes of other people saying, hey, this person has built something or this person has been very successful in X, Y, and Z. It's that realization. For me, it was um, going through a major depressive order, which was not fun, but that realigned my whole thought process. And when you get this like sense of clarity, and I don't know why this thought came across, but it was like a very clear moment for me of, when you're so miserable. I remember going to work and I was living in Baltimore. I was working in downtown DC. I had to drive down 95 and 495, which are the most horrific traffic ridden roads in America other than LA. And I would be like dreaming, looking at the billboard of like the lottery, right? And I'd be like, oh my God, if I could just win that, it would solve all my problems. And this concept of realizing that was not going to solve anything and it probably would just make it worse. And then the next stage for me was, oh, I just want to be on a beach and I can do nothing all day and I can do whatever I want. And the real changing moment for me was when I realized I remember sitting on the beach in Hawaii thinking like, I'm on day 4. I'm kind of over this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, you're telling me I can be in heaven for like 4 to 5 days and already think to myself, I'm ready to move on and do something new. It's like that was a real clicking moment for me. But some people don't ever have that or truly enjoy just doing that. And that's fine, but that is just not me. And it is for sure a characteristic that you see in people like yourself or entrepreneurs in general.
Yeah, probably. And like we're all so special and so unique in our own ways, which makes
Mhm.
also very important going back to like define yourself, know who you are, because we see like you see a movie and you're in New York and it all seems like so beautiful, but I'm sure a New Yorker will have a different view of reality, you know? Or
Yeah.
you think that when you live in this other place, you're going to be happy. In my case, for example, the fact that I live in Peru, what do you think people say when I say I live in Peru? They think about the llamas and Machu Picchu, right? You know, they think like, where is this guy? I told a friend, Gary Baseman, a super artist in LA, and like he's like, brother, if you live in Peru, you might as well go to Mars. You know, like it's and it was funny because I mean, I'm sure it's a joke, but I understand that. And in order to be able to make your own decisions that you feel comfortable with, you have to learn to not care at all, you know, if
Yeah.
possible, about what other
Yeah.
people think, whether you've made a mistake or not. And I live here for a really strategic decision. I'm not here just because. Like I made my decisions why I'm here, and for that you have to let go of a lot of stereotypes and beliefs, and that's really important because that's the only way to get to your true self.
Yes, man. And it is, man, such an impactful thing to say. And there's just, man, we're getting great comments. People are really loving this, really loving this. You're dropping bombs. And one of the questions is, I think, art that impacted you, but I don't want the literal answer of that. I think I'm interested in, this is a good segue. We'll talk about this and then transition to Web3, which is, talk to me about some of these highlights and your moments in your careers. Could you mention this? You look at your work as work over your career as one big piece of art, and there's obviously shifts within that large piece of artwork. Some pivotal moments and shifts that like you reflect on that were failures, but you learned from. I'm interested in that.
Okay, and the failures. All right. Well, I think failures that I've had, for example, is when somebody. I remember when somebody, a friend, some DJ friends called me, musicians, they DJ in Ibiza, and they wanted me to make a character for them. And I was like starting with my characters, and they said they were gonna put me in contact with their manager, who was like a super famous guy there. And my biggest failure there was think that that was gonna like I was gonna change my career because I had a studio for of post production, and I wanted to see how to get out of it. And so I think my failure there was when you get too impatient and your expectations are too high on something, right? You want to get the project that's going to help you explode. You're going to get the project that's going to help you change the life that you're living that you feel like you want to change. Which the one I was living was perfect, but that's what we were talking about before. Like the night dreams of I'll be happy when I'll be doing this when. And I like to think about that as a failure because it makes me lose my focus in what really matters. And what's crazy is that what really matters is just now, and it's difficult to just focus on now. It's so difficult.
Oh, so hard.
So I think
It's
that's
so hard. I love, love that example. And I can, and since we're in the Web3 world, it couldn't be more relatable to the people that are watching this show that are on Twitter, because all of us that were in this space in 2021, if you weren't, you missed out on some crazy, wild times. And there wasn't a human being on crypto Twitter in 2021, end of 2021, beginning of 2022, 100% thought this is it. I'm retired for life. There's no way. And I remember my buddy that I started. So I have two co-founders, one that started the podcast and one that does the strategy with me now. My original, still my co-founder, but my first co-founder was lifelong buddy. I'd known him for over 30 years. He wasn't really into Web3. And I was like, dude, I'm telling you, this is going to revolutionize. I'm a brand marketing guy. That's what I was just fascinated that like, this is going to change the way companies can build with community. I'm still fascinated by this. It's cool to see the second wave of people really understand that. And so that's why I was in it. But I also then started feeding the narrative to him like, dude, 6 months, we're going to be millionaires. Like this is 100% happening. And listen, if I would have played my cards right, I absolutely would have been. But guess what? We're not. And a majority of the people that thought they weren't, we're not. and all of the stuff that you see on Twitter is fake. And it's a very, very small percentage of people that actually did do the thing that everyone thought was going to do. So that's just another way to relate it to Web3, but it's such a critical learning lesson. And I even still find myself falling into the degen trenches mode every now and then to say, like, I'm just impatient. But sure enough, the monetization that I've seen over the last, say, 6 months, that's come from 5 years of work. You know, I've technically been streaming in Web3 podcasting for 3 years, but I'm not going to discredit the 2 years of me streaming on Twitch playing video games where for months nobody was in chat other than chatbots that were trying to like get people to click on a link. So that's the true reality, and you said it in a different way. So thank you for sharing that, man.
I'd like to go back because I said something and I feel that it needs a bit of adjustment. Like when I said the full circle and like that you're doing the podcast, that is a hobby, right? But you're not. This is not a hobby for you. This seems so much more important. It reminds me like when I did sculptures at the beginning. I produced sculptures as a hobby, but it was much more than that, and I was finding a way to make it part of my life. And it turned out being part of my life in a way that I couldn't even have imagined, but it did for a while. So I think it's just because since I said it, and I want to make sure that it doesn't come across.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm actually glad you said that because it brought up a different thought, which is part of it. And I mean, there is a harsh reality. If it has been not till I would say the last 6 months, it absolutely has been a hobby in the sense that I did it because I loved it, but I was not getting paid for it at all. Right. And yes, I mean, listen, back in 2021, 22, I was getting pre-sale spots and free NFTs that were worth ungodly amounts of money, and I made money that way. But once that died down, it was like, I'm still just going to do this, and it was a hobby. And there are many entrepreneurs that have said on this is, listen, man, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. Now, whether you want to make that leap to change your hobby into a business, that is a decision you have to make because that comes with a whole nother set of worries and pains. What I've done that's calculated over time is I've intentionally kept it at hobby level because I need to, you know, I am older. I have mortgages. I need to take care of my family, and I'm not willing to take the risk on something like this until I can really prove a business model based out of what I've done. So I took no offense to that. It also brings up a beautiful question, though, because I know you've probably struggled with the same thing. And I would love to hear your insights on how do you get over, or what did you do in these instances where your art that felt like a hobby, you made the leap to a business? Or how did you deal with this, again, juxtaposition of like, well, I need to make a living, but yet I want a hobby. This is a fascinating topic. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's difficult. I mean, what I did is I started as a hobby. I had my studio for like with motion graphics and post production and animation in 2010, and it was for advertising, right? And so at the beginning, it was very exciting because I'm a manager, because it's my studio and I'm hiring and we're doing projects and etc. But after a few years and you start noticing the dynamic, you're like, so what am I, like a guy that just like, what's going to happen? People I work with are going to leave, bring some new people, get the same clients, same projects. And it feels very repetitive. And it's like, okay, so there'll be better years, worse years, but more or less if I adapt, this is my thing, right? And so I said, no way. I have to find a way out of here, and it's not I'm not being creative in the sense that I want. But of course, I have to be creative and be able to create income so I can continue living and be able to do it as well. There's always the fear. Okay, this was a big fear of a motor of my life is you have to be a very good designer in order to get a good job, a good salary, or a freelance or whatever. It's like there's so many people in this business that unless you can really stand out, you're going to be very low. That was like my big fear, especially because I'm not a 9-to-5 guy. I can't stand it because I can't stand like I finish the task and they give me another one just because I'm there. You know, I can't stand having to go for lunch at a certain hour and come back at the next one because that's how it is. I can't stand, you know, I love just working away and being as productive as possible. And then if on a Thursday I feel really tired, I just don't do anything. And then I'm going to work on a Sunday where there's no noise and nobody bothers me. So I need to find a way for that to work. So I was a groundbreaking moment was I got to know the festival called Pictoplasma, which is a character design festival, and it meant a lot to me. I think I guess it touched many people as it affected me, but for me it was like mind blowing, and I was like, I want to make characters. And so the first strategic decision was, what could a client want? And like a character in the end, it's a hero, you know, it's a main actor. So when you're doing a campaign for any advertising, you're gonna need a main character. So I was like, okay, that could be interesting. And so I try to make characters in my spare time, and I would upload them to Behance, which is a great platform to show your work.
Mm-hmm.
And like I didn't like my name for this. My name is Jamie Alvarez. So it was like not commercial at all, you know. It was like I was not gonna. You can look Jamie Alvarez and you see a guy in prison. You see me, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't work. So we had this baby cat called. She was a tuxedo cat, and I kind of liked, which is funny, right? Because this is undoxed kind of thing and doxed thing in Web3, and I'm talking about 2013. I kind of like the fact that I would hide behind a character that would be much more appealing than myself, right?
Oh, yeah, come on, man. You're insanely appealing. But yes,
So,
I know what you're saying.
yeah. So in a way, it was a superhero kind of thing, you know, where like
Mhm.
I could feel I could stop being myself for a while and my uncertainty, my fears, you know, and my insecurities, and suddenly Mr. Cat is there, you know, and I would tell my friends and this director I used to work a lot with, and he would just laugh at my face, you know, like yeah, Mr. Cat, like if I was childish or if I was gay or something like that, I was like, oh my god, but I said no, I'm going, this is my character, you know, I'm not gonna stop, so I don't care, and that same guy after he hired me for a super cool job, which actually like I practically made for him.
And I mean this is I think a perfect segue into Web3. That's a thing that attracted a lot of people, right? Like you could be anonymous, you could hide behind um a PFP. You didn't have to be your typical like I have a day job and uh I'm a corporate worker person. Where did you really start diving into Web3? Was there a moment that you had an aha moment of like this is something I want to really try out? Talk to us about the beginning of the journey, and then we'll talk about what's going on now.
Sure. Well, in 2021, I saw a lot of like my friends. They were creating one-ones, you know, like with Super Rare and Foundation. And I've never seen myself as that type of artist. I'm a character creator, and I usually don't even do backgrounds, you know. So, and some of these were like well known, and they would get project like they would get like really good sales. I was like, wow, what's going on? But at the same time, 2021, I was having a lot of work with COVID. Designers just skyrocketed. I was having so many projects, you know, you just got like no, like 4 or 5 a month would be calling me, you know, and it was a really good year. So I couldn't really focus. One second, please. Can we wait one moment? Because I have to open the door.
Yeah, go for it, man. Take your time. By the way, anybody that has questions, hit me up on Abstract. We got nobody on Abstract. I am sorry, Abstract. We need to figure out how to up your game when it comes to numbers. I know my content's not that bad. I know people like it. But we only got one person watching on Abstract, and that hurts my soul because I love the platform and I want more people to do it.
Okay.
All right, brother. Like I said, no worries at all.
My wife just came, so I had to open the door, and she didn't have keys, so I'm sorry.
Nah, totally cool, man. No big deal at all. So, yeah, so people are doing these one-on-ones. You're a character designer. You're not even doing backgrounds. You're smashed on COVID, and we left off there.
Yeah. So let's say like in July, August, I got a really cool project with Jackson Wang and his new band called Panda Pack. He's like a super famous artist, like more than Justin Bieber in Asia, and he's actually famous all over the world. And so I created some characters, and there was like some human heads were like cute, and I created some a rabbit and a deer, and they were like something I like to call a cute badass. I'm like really developed. I went from cute, but it was annoying that my characters were so cute that would feel too childish, and I wanted to make it a little bit more adult. And the way to do
Yeah.
that was like to make them a bit more like mean. So
Yeah.
that was like my first try in doing that. And after that, my same rep from Asia, they told me about this project with Nike, and this project was actually like the beginning for what I was going to do in Web3 because it was creating a set of characters which they were going to call the athletars, and creating the designs for different types of apparel like casual, tech, and sport. Do a walk cycle, and then prepare like different clothing so that they could be interchangeable. And like it wasn't a Web3 collection. This was for their app and for the collection of the next year
Yeah.
to be able to produce all the clothing but doing it digitally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I ended up creating all that system, kind of design system for that type of character, the clothing, how they would look, how to mix. Also, there like how the faces, the heads were going to be, like creating it stylized. They showed some reference initially that they had, and we evolved them to where we were going to go, etc. And so that was really in line with what I was seeing with the communities and the Web3 projects that were actually the ones that were much more of interest to me because there's nothing, now I can say it better and understand it better because I've been here for a while, but there's nothing more rewarding than create a character that somebody's going to put as their identity.
Oh, huge.
So
Huge.
that's an honor for me. And I think my other friends who were doing one-ones were like, bro, I mean, I like to do art. And I'm not like, I want to do art. Wow. I feel more like I want to do something that like people in particular are going to be like, they're going to want to put on as their PFP
Yeah.
and own it in a way. Own it, I mean, like not just buying it, but really feeling identifying. And that's where my art connects with the viewer, and we blend it, and suddenly a third thing appears. So that's like the most rewarding thing for me. And Web3 was that. So
Dude,
that's
I
what's
had
up.
never thought about it that way. Like I've thought about the PFB being you or a mirror of your expression of you, but I've never thought it from the artist lens, right? And the fact that you're a character model designer, like couldn't be more perfect from the PFP perspective. Like that makes so much more sense just hearing it from you, even though I was thinking the same thing. Thank you for sharing that insight. That's a beautiful, like, that's a great short right there, man. We're gonna have so many amazing little snippets out of this conversation. So take me along, like you just described the ethos of like what really attracted to you. And obviously, like, I'm glad you brought up Nike because even though it wasn't a Web3 project, the kind of the production design and the things that needed to go in this to have all these interchangeable elements is the base behind what a lot of Web3 collections are as well too. So you're almost, unknowingly starting to build that skill set, and I'm sure have over time.
Exactly.
We're in the 2021, 2022 era. You had gotten your first, like you said, big project. Take us through, the next couple years up till kind of present day. I know we had a kid called Beast in the middle of that. So like, let's talk about a couple of highlights there. We'll talk about what you're currently doing, and then we'll wind it
So
down and call it a day. Because by the way, I've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes already. I told you it'd feel like 10.
yeah. So yeah, I did first a Web3 project for a Poker Starter. They called me, an agency called me. I did this diamond that we called Poly. Back then, I didn't know any of the slang, so it was a diamond hands. I didn't even know what that meant. In retrospect, now I know what they were doing. And like, I did 3 projects for them because it worked really well. And they told me that I was gonna have to receive a lot of calls. And back then, 2021, I was like, I had so many projects. Okay, cool. It's just gonna continue this way, right? So awesome. But no, I really received a lot of calls, and it was all Web3. and one of them was with a kid called Beast, and they shared the project of like what they were doing, and as a character artist, like I received all the information that they were trying to do, and from my side, like okay, they practically wanted to do everything, you know, with a character. So I was like, okay, so like just to take you a little bit within this frame is like the anatomy needs to have the articulations, you know, that work so that the character can walk and move the arms correctly, you know, or enough so that since you want it to be fashion wise, it has to be able to put the clothes on and that it looks good. Or
Mhm.
for example, we want it to be pop art and modern, so we would talk about artists that we love, like Cause, you know, Murakami, and see how we can remix in a way that it feels something that everybody can relate to, but at the same time something special, you know. So
Mhm.
like we started building that, and me from the artistic side, and like the technical pipeline as a 3D artist, you know, like now that we've spoken, you see I'm quite practical. So using that practicality in terms of how are we going to make all these things fit while creating the art and fixing the rig, and in the mean, and also like my goal there was, I'm not a very technical person, even though I work with computers. So I want to enter the Web3 space in a way where I can focus first on the art while I learn a bit more about what's going on. And I really learned a lot there because the community, right? So how important the community is in the Web3 ecosystem. It is vital. It's your heart, you know. So I was able to understand what users want to play with or what they want to receive or like how we have to work. So it was a great experience in terms of understanding what's going on. I stayed there like for 2 years and a half. And last year, more or less, last year, right
Yeah.
now, in March,
Yeah.
uh, I just left and I decided like I can't leave Web3 space. This is my place, you know. PFPs, algo, seeing like the algorithm create a collection and you don't know what's coming is gonna happen. Having direct connection with the community, being part of something because like we're a small village where I am the artist of this little village. You know, it makes
Mhm.
you feel important, makes you feel somebody. So it was really a life changing kind of thing, and I wasn't gonna. I had to stay. I wanted to stay here. I just love it here. You know, so
Yeah. And so two things come up, and I'm really interested in this because you, from an artist, you know, the main people that I deal with in this space are devs, artists, and founders. And which most people think probably is like all founders are devs or artists, and that's not usually the case. There's a founder that hires a dev and an artist. What are your qualities that you look out for with founders that you want to work for? What is really matters to you as you're vetting this relationship that you're going to build? Because you're about to put thousands of hours into a project like Kid Called Beast, and that's a very important thing. What do you look for?
first of all, you have to be professional
Mhm.
because I'm a professional. I don't do this. I mean, the Web3 space is full of people that might like do it as a hobby or like say, yeah, I'm gonna do it. But I've been working in this for many years. So I need to make things, you know, they have to be clear, they have to be well done, and this is not just a profession for me. This is much more. So I need to make sure that it's serious. You know
Yeah.
that people are really. And usually the way that I do it now, like, is I separate since the projects are so big, and that's something that also is a bit scary because when you get into a relationship with somebody in a community project, and if you do a collection, that's a lot of months. So I prefer to separate it in parts. You know, like first the character, the base character. If everything goes well, we can go to the next step. And also for a founder, it's not all founders have the capacity. Like for example, a kid called Beast had. You know, some founders don't have that capacity, and then maybe they need to wait or they need to find funding or whatever. So it's a way as well to like separate in parts and be able to do it in a way that is not as no you don't feel so I don't know how to say it, but I don't know, it just feels a bit more easy to do, right? So
No,
that,
I'm really glad that you brought that up because we do the same thing on the strategy side, which is let's have a couple meetings together and see if this working relationship works. Then we can talk about deepening the partnership. It's just kind of a similar thing that you're going for.
yeah, and if somebody tells me I want you to be free and creative, then that's like probably it's a no-no. uh,
Ooh, tell me about that because that's kind of opposite of what you would think.
I want to work with people that have a brief, for example. I want to work with people that maybe they don't know what they want to do, but they have an idea like what type of project they want to create. Because I'm an observer, I'm a problem solver, and I will understand and listen to what you want to say, and I'll translate it into a visual character. But for that, we need to be together, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I will use my talent and my experience to create something within my style, and I'll get into uncomfortable zone as much as I can, but it has to be within my style because that's what I'm good at.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk together to make something you're proud of. If you're not in that mindset, it's very difficult for both. And it's happened to me with clients. Like, you're the artist, do something cool, and you can do 1,000 different things that are cool, but that's not going to be the one that you want, you know. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
Dude, I am so glad that we literally just had a conversation with somebody recently about this. And I ran, I worked at Geico and I ran the brand department. And we spent over $2 billion on advertising, $100 million plus budget alone, just with the stuff I was dealing with. And a brief is so critically important for output on creative production, which sounds weird. And there's an
I
art,
love briefs.
yes, there's an art form to it. It is not an easy thing to do because it needs brevity, but also needs deep detail as well. And so I think this is a fascinating concept. Tell me what deeply resonates with you as someone that writes a brief that nailed it. Like, what are these elements that matter to you?
Well, you know what's crazy is that the difference between somebody that knows how to do a brief and someone that doesn't is that the amount of detail that somebody that does know how to create, even though they can send you a PDF with 5 pages, you know that there's a lot of work for you to do there, and there's a lot of creativity to put in there, and there's a lot of things that you're going to have to solve, even though there's 5 pages, and there can even be a lot of freedom, even that way. Whereas somebody who doesn't know clearly what a brief is, there's going to be a lot of open spots that are going to create a lot of chaos. And so my job as well as a creative is not only the artistic side, it's also to see how we're gonna I'm not gonna say guide you because I don't like to put that kind of way of seeing it, but like we're gonna work together to find those things. And if if you haven't done a little bit of like, okay, at least I want something in this area, then it's gonna be such a difficult job for me to get to where we want to start actually to work, you know? So that's why it's important.
I absolutely love I love this conversation. And that's it just doesn't make sense, right? You have to be and what I also heard from you, and it's even in the creative world, but you just have to be intentional. Like, I don't think it's amazing to me the amount of people that I deal with, even at really top tier, just are not intentional, put deep thought in what they're trying to do. They think that all of these like really high level things just magically happen, but it's a lot of an intentionality. The amount of time that goes into research before you even can get to a creative brief is totally bypassed. One of the biggest things I brought out of the design school was 80% of the magic happens in that process, actually. It's not in the actual doing of the work. Yes, you've honed that skill set over time. But if you don't do proper research, I promise you, you're going to get a shit outcome. You agree? I hear a head shaking. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, 100%.
You 100% agree. Love it.
So yeah, I agree because it's actually the part that I love the most. Also, after the execution, sometimes it's very tedious. Now, what happens to me when I create character, and going back to the rubber band when I'm erasing, is that sometimes, and that's where I'm trying to keep exploring and learning, is how can you make your ideas be as cool as when they were in the brief, when they're physically there? Because so many times it happens as something that seemed good, even in brief, with references. Like, you have references that are exactly like, this is what I want, and you do it, and you really are replicating the references, and yet there's no magic there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the first step in creating that part, and then the second step, which is like something I feel that's my also expertise, is how do we make something now out of this, and make the magic, and that depends on the communication with the people you collaborate with, the moment if you're in the zone,
Yep.
time you have, and so many different elements that create something unique, and that's the beauty of this.
100%. Dude, unbelievable conversation. I do want to give you time. I do have to go watch my little Bambino. I have an 18-month-old, so I'm gonna get yelled at here eventually. I don't want that to happen, but I also don't want to do you a disservice to talk about current and future plans. So let's talk about what just happened yesterday, why you're excited to do a collab with Typical Friends. I know you got some crocodiles walking around. Like, let's just talk about some of these things because, and I'm not already going to say this too, man. I deal with a lot of founders, and the level of professionalism when it came to you as like responsiveness and not over pushy of like tweet this, tweet that. I wanted to do everything I could to help you. And it's just, again, like even this formal, like just back and forth communication lacks a lot of times. So thank you for that. And I was more than glad, and I will be more than glad to help promote you and help you just continue to spread your wings and fly, especially after this freaking conversation. Amazing. So yeah, what happened yesterday? Why Typical Friends? I know we had some sellouts and stuff, so tell us a little bit about that.
So basically, Typical Friends is a project that started with Marcus Magnuson, a legend in the space, in 2021. With Invisible Friends was huge, right? And so he called me like a year ago, a bit more, and he had this project of limited designer editions, where he had done the first one with this green character called Ooze. Then there was a second one by another legend called Tony Babel, and he was like, I want to invite artists that are part of the space to create limited designer editions, and since like you created the art for a kid called Beast, I'd love you to be the next artist. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a kid called Beast. It can be like something that's yours, right? And in this case, he said total freedom, but this is a different kind of freedom, right? Because it's not it's a different kind of project. And so I was like super happy. Once again, that's like it's like we're getting an Oscar, in a way, because I really respect him from before. He's a master of walk cycle. He's a master of 2D style. He's just a legend, right? And well, then there were some things with Typical Friends that occurred, and Eddie took it back. Like he launched it again in end of last year, and he called me if he wanted to continue. I said, of course. And so I took that time to even keep building even more. So it was going to be a PFP and a loop animation, and it ended up being not only one character but two characters, and these two characters have like their two versions, and I give the files in 3D in different formats. So like trying to help people express themselves just like I like to express myself, right? So at everything, right? In Web2 world, usually you hide the master files. Here in Web3, we give everything, so people can do anything they want, right? Which is beautiful. And so it was the difference between the two first limited designer editions is that since I had usually they were just for Typical Friends and Garbage Friends, but because I had such a big link, with the Kid Called Beast and other communities that I had been working with this past year, like Cashew or Keck, I asked Eddie if we could change things a bit, and that's how we came up with, we're going to do a limited edition, separated like in 4 parts, where the different communities are going to be able to mint, prioritizing, of course, his community because it was supposed to be only for them. And I also came up with an idea, which was I love the art scene, the gallery scene, so the LDEs, they would be signed and numbered, which is also something really fun because when you get yours, it's going to be in the metadata and the LDE, and somebody might want, like the cats, it's 1 out of 99, and the bunny is 25, and so like who's going to get the 69, or who's going to get number 1 or 99? There's going to be a secondary game, I think, that's going to be really fun within that world. And so, long story short, those minted out yesterday. There was 128. It went really well. They went quite fast. The first tier was like, maybe a couple hours, but then the two and the third was like in minutes. That was because the first tier was a small. It's like there's not as many holders, and usually like collectors. But it went. I didn't expect it to mint out in the tier one, which is already something that was a very good sign. So it all minted out really fast. It was like a celebration day. It's a collaboration, and a collaboration for me, the celebration where different communities come and join, and we're together, and that's what happened. Many communities joined that day, and for that I'm super thankful. And now we're still going on. Like there's another the parallel edition, which is the open edition, but only for limited time. There's the Mr. Cat with a black jacket, which is the one that represents me most. It's my alter ego, but it's gonna be now for everybody. And that one is a limited time open edition for I think there's like 40 hours left. And this is more than just a collaboration; it's a statement. You're going to become the OG of my project, and whatever I'm going to do in the future, whether it's Croco, because Croco is probably the one that's going to come up next. This means not, as we were talking today, like it's not the end of anything. This is part of the journey, right? This was a small step, and what's going to come after. And I am deeply thankful, and I want to connect with all these people. It was great to do something small in a way where I can later on connect with everybody individually, whoever wants. Not everybody wants, but whoever wants. I'm there for you, and I want this to be something special as we grow. And I'm going to be in Web3. Like I'm doing 3 other projects with other founders, which is great because through my art I can connect with great people. I have the privilege to connect with great minds such as yourself and many others, just thanks to my art, which makes me very thankful. It leads me to places that I wouldn't be able to get to in any other way.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna stay here forever. I mean, this is my home now.
Same here, man. I just the people and I'm just fascinated. It's really cool because it takes all the things that we're interested in or have careers in, which is brand, marketing, creativity, and combines it with technology. And that has always been super fascinating to me. So I want to clear up though, open edition, if I buy even just one, you're kind of considering that, hey, you put some faith in me. This is kind of the beginning of the Mr. Cat journey because currently a lot of your work has been for other projects. Am I right or wrong there?
Yes, exactly. This is the first project that is signed by me, to say it somehow. For A Kid Called Beast, I was the artist. I was part of the founding team, but I'm not a founder.
Yeah.
In this case, it's the new journey. That's where it starts.
And talk to me about the two, because there's 2 options, right? Isn't there 2 open editions? So what's the difference there? What's your thought process?
So for the open editions, there's only one, which is the Mr. Cat with the black jacket.
Oh, okay.
There was a pink bunny, but the pink bunny, she sneaked in the limited designer edition, so she's not signed. But there's only 4 of them, so she's ultra rare, and everybody loves a pink bunny. So
okay, yeah, because that's what I was thinking. I was like, I saw the pink bunny too, but the open edition, there's only one, and that's the black cat with a jacket. Dude, so cool. And then I did read, if you were somehow to accumulate a certain amount, you could burn them as well too. Can we talk about that?
This year, like right now, I'm luckily I have a lot of projects, but let's say that last year, so I don't know when I'm going to be able to I had to say, sorry to all my fans, like, please give me 1 week. And so last year, many people used to call me to create a character for them, but maybe they don't have the funding or they have, some issues and they can't do it. So the idea that we came up and we found it could be fun is that if a community joins and buys mints 88 of these Mr. Cats, whether it's on mint or on secondary, I will do a character for their community. They get the rights, they get everything in the same specs as this one. So this is a way for the community to join and to be able to buy if they want to, and I'll do that for them.
Oh my God! Well, you gotta, dude. We'll talk about this offline, but I could link you up with tons of amazing communities. The pupils guy that just was on before, he would probably love to do something like that. He's doing a whole comic-based punk lore based off like comic and ska and punk music, which is just tons of fun. So many people to talk about. We'll talk about that later. But I'm super pumped to be a part of the OG Mr. Cat. And Croc stuff looks amazing. Let's talk about the next 3 to 6 months, I have one more actual question. You know, we've talked for over an hour and a half, and I asked 2 technical questions. One more question. I'll give you my final comments, and we'll call it a day, man. So, what does the next 3 to 6 months look like for Jamie?
So first of all, let's see how we continue with this project. This collaboration. It was supposed to be just a drop, but because there has been a great reception, I'm thinking about creating a Discord. You know, to be able to be closer to all the community, all the members that have become OGs. So that's something I have to take care of. Also finish the 3 characters I'm working on right now, which are all, as I mentioned before, for our Web3 project. So it's really great, so I can continue exploring and learning about people. And I want to, you know, my 3 to 6 months are looking good in that sense, and I just want to be working or exploring or learning, taking it easy. I think it's gonna be. I don't want to make any expectations. I just want to focus on the present work, and I'm sure it's. I mean, if I like to look at where I was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was in Pictoplasma, presenting my projects in Berlin in a festival, like in a dream place, and that was 10 years ago. So I believe in 10 years ahead or in 6 months ahead, I'm just gonna keep growing. So that's
Yeah,
my.
man. And I want to be doing it with you, brother. I cannot wait to continue and talk and have the relationship, because this was phenomenal. Last question. I ask this to every guest. Honest, open feedback. I am not a glass door. You can say anything you want, but honest, you know, I'm sure you've been on hundreds of spaces. You might have been on other podcasts. How do you think Mikey G and Web3 went today? Hit me, brother.
I think it went great. I think that the most important part is how you make people feel themselves. And that's what I think the world needs, what the space needs, to just not need to put a mask, you know, to undox yourself, to be yourself, because that's maybe the hardest part for many people to do, to be themselves. And that's why I think that this podcast is great for that, because we need people like you in this space.
Thanks, man. And literally, that's all I'm going for. I think, I don't know if I told you this story, but really the main like genesis of this podcast was, you know, when I got the Hate Beast mod gig, I was a thing all overnight, and I was getting all of these messages like $1,000 for a retweet, and this was the meta of the like comment, retweet, you'll be part of some giveaway. And, you know, a lot of people went down that road. I could have made a ton of money, but I just could not bring myself to do that, because I knew 98% of these people were just scammers. And so I was like, you know what? I want to be a content creator, and I want to impact this space. And I was really enjoying streaming. And I said, the only way I could feel comfortable with this is if I talk directly to the founders and I interacted with people that I genuinely enjoyed and appreciated. And that's how this was all born, man. And I haven't backed down from it. And I totally agree. And it's really cool to see, definitely I'd say less than the 6 to 8 months, my brand has gotten a lot more visibility, because people are just, they're done. They're burnt out. They're so sick of being burned. They're so sick of dealing with, you know, the KOLs that I would love to list right now on the top of my head that I don't have fond opinions of. And it's cool to see, because I think it's much needed. And also the other mission too was, this goes beyond Web3. You know, like I'm pretty sure, well, I'm not pretty sure, I'm confident this was my calling, just like your calling was to, you know, share love and beauty through your character animation. It's through my podcast, and I just won't stop doing it because it's a part of me at this point.
That's beautiful.
Man, my recaps on this is just, again, I felt the warmth. We've got lots of comments of your responses were just very thoughtful and deep and meaningful. And I would say, out of my recent podcast, like I said, a lot of times, like we talked about this stuff. We talked about finding yourself. We talked about not getting too excited, because success takes a long period of time. Like, these principles are always the same every podcast. I just love it, but it's different. But you gave me a lot of like unique insights on the same principles, and I deeply appreciated that. So thank you for just I could even tell when you were thinking about the responses, you were deeply thinking. And that means really a lot to me because I've spent a lot of time understanding how hard that is. And I could tell you were really intentional about that. And that is the biggest thing by far that stuck out to me. I think the other thing that was really interesting to me was this constant juxtaposition of, like I said, of like, you are incredibly creative human being, but you're also practical. And I think there's something to be said for that, but also a really tough thing to balance. I don't think me and you will ever find the solution for that. It's something we have to deal and judge with every day. You know, something that you said that really stuck out to me too is I can't tell you how many times I've thought to myself, dude, I've been doing this for like over 3 years now and I've done nothing. But then I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like I've had all of these people on my podcast. Are you kidding me? Like, that's insane. So keep on patting yourself on the back because you're doing amazing things. And thank you. Like I said, beginning of a friendship, you gave me a ton of your time. You're incredibly busy. That is not lost on me. And let's keep on talking. I cannot wait to do our follow-up call. You got a lot of exciting things happening with the open edition. I think there'll be some insights that I can help you out and maybe link you up with the right people as well too. I am here to help. Do not ever hesitate to hit me up on Telegram or ask for a favor. I'm here for your brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thanks so much.
And with that being said, people, Mikey G and Jamie are out.
Let's go.